Nearly 60 million Americans live in communities run by homeowners associations. HOAs are nonprofit organizations formed to manage common areas in neighborhoods or communities. To many, they are a blessing, but to critics, they are a curse. Tonight, what are we truly buying into when we purchase a home? What rights do we have? How much control should an HOA have? And where should the line be drawn? I'm Ernie Manous, and this is Houston 8. Homeowners associations, better known as HOAs, first emerged in the United States in the mid-1800s. In the 1960s, with a push toward large-scale residential development by the Federal Housing Authority and Urban Land Institute, a modification to federal mortgage insurance rules for cooperatives and condominiums, and an increasing cultural preference for architectural uniformity, HOAs began to flourish. Like a city, HOAs can provide services, regulate activities, levy assessments, and impose fines. They work to provide upkeep, improve safety, and increase property values. But unlike a municipal government, HOAs are not subject to the constitutional constraints that governments must abide by, and that is where concern arises. Homeowners associations have been criticized for having restrictive rules and regulations on how homeowners are allowed to conduct themselves and use their property. And in Texas, HOAs are allowed to foreclose on a member's house without any judicial procedure, to collect fees, fines, or to place a lien on the property to collect unpaid assessments. While some say HOAs are necessary to give us the clean, safe, and uniform dwellings we seek, others question just how much of our personal freedoms should be given up in our search for utopian living. Joining us tonight are Richard Alderman, also known as the People's Lawyer, Director, Center for Consumer Law at the University of Houston. Beanie Adolph with Texas Homeowners for HOA Reform, Incorporated, and Charles Daughtry with the Community Association Institute. Thank you all for being here. First of all, when we think of homeowners associations, and you think of an area, and primarily I think of Houston, without having any kind of zoning, is this a necessary thing to have? Let me start right here with you.
I think absolutely it's a necessary thing to have. I can give you a personal experience that I think will exemplify that. I live in a neighborhood that has an active community association. On either side of my neighborhood, one has restrictions that they don't enforce, and the other has none. And I'm a runner, so I run every day through both of these neighborhoods. And literally, in the ones that don't have any restrictions, there's one guy has about 6 or 7 cars in his front yard on cinder blocks. People store their UVs and travel trailers. Some of them have grass that's that high. I mean, it's great for individual freedom not to have it maybe, but if you're the guy next door trying to sell your house, it's a nightmare.
I'm going over to the People's Lawyer on this one. If I want to have a truck on my front lawn on cinder blocks, don't I have that right?
Just buy a lot that allows you to do it. I mean, it's this basically, I guess you can just view it as a contract. I'm going to sell you something, and you look at the terms, and if you don't like it, don't buy it. If you like it, buy it, but you can't buy it and then say, I don't like those terms. And
but
all of these terms are in there.
Beanie, what's the problem?
Well, first off, I wish the people had full disclosure before they bought. So many times, in fact, most of the time, these deed restrictions, these CNRs, are not given at the closing, never before, and many times not even afterwards. So how can somebody be agreeing to a contract when they have not even seen the contract? There's one other thing that's terribly important. Before the last session of the legislature, there was a House hearing at the University of Houston, and the head of city planning here in Houston wanted a bill introduced that would force HOAs on places that did not have them. So here, out of one side of their mouth, they're saying, you agreed, and out of the other side, they're saying, we are going to force one on. And she was asking, with just 30% approval, to take away the constitutional rights. Sorry.
I'm going to also pull this back a little bit, make it just a little bit broader. If it is a community association that is running your HOA and you buy into that property and then the board there of your HOA changes over and they put into effect new rules and regulations, they're changing what you've already purchased, haven't they? Or aren't they held to what, at the point of purchase, those were the agreed to rules?
They can't just come in and change things. I mean, again, and I completely agree. I mean, maybe the answer for people watching us is you've just heard, get a copy of them. There's a copy, they're all filed, they're public record. In fact, people aren't even subject to them to the full extent if they're not filed, so people can look at them. And I think now you've heard how important it is to get a copy and to ask for a copy. But they also tell you what it takes to change the rules. And I don't know of any that says the board can just vote and that's the end of it.
So when do these things get established then? These rules are established when the development is built or when the initial HOA is put in place?
The rules are developed when the development's initially built. The builder typically puts the restrictions in place, so they're there of record before anybody ever purchases the first home.
So then those are set for the life of that area?
Yes. A new board cannot come in and change the rules. Those are the rules. A new board can establish guidelines that kind of flesh out the rules that are set forth in the restrictions, but they cannot change the rules.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't know that I
There'll be policies for what you have to do
that.
to amend the rules. It's not like, I mean, it's like almost any corporation. And you will be allowed to make changes, but they will generally require 70 or 80% of all the homeowners
or
to vote.
Board members?
No, homeowners.
Homeowners.
It's typically 75% of the actual residents in the neighborhood.
I think, and one person summed it up beautifully on our Facebook. We put it up what the topic is, and people share their thoughts and ideas. And one person said it's only as bad as the people's involvement in their homeowners associations. If everyone in the community got involved, everybody would have a say in it. You disagree.
No.
Do you disagree?
Oh, no. In fact, there was a Senate hearing on the 7th, and the CAI representative said, if they don't like it, just get on, take action. That doesn't work. The night before, I had gotten an email from Pflugerville, and this lady said there are 222 homes in her section. She had gone by the bylaws and the CCRs. They had done everything to announce the meeting. They got 125 proxies, and because they wanted to oust the board, and the attorney said, no, the board is staying, and that's it. And they did.
Well, that wasn't his question. I mean, and I agree with you. When there's a board that's not acting properly, it can be a problem. He said if it's a good board that's acting properly, it's not a problem.
Right.
I mean, do you disagree with that? Do you say every single board is bad?
Oh, no.
Okay, so
Right,
we're not disagreeing on that. It's the bad boards we want to deal with, the people that are really abusing their powers or not doing what's in the bylaws, or as you just said, not following the bylaws, and I think we'd probably be in agreement. That's a real problem.
And Richard, let me just throw in here, our law firm represents almost 300 associations, and I can't tell you how many times we've had boards who are too zealous overthrown by the homeowners. I mean, it absolutely happens. It happens on a regular basis. They come in, they go out, and they walk the neighborhood and get proxies, and they kick out the board members who they don't like what's happening. And so these runaway boards that you hear about, I don't see that happening in actual practice. I mean, it's self-regulating because you get the number of votes that are required in the bylaws, and you can throw them out.
Before I say anything, I'm going back over to Beanie because she looks like she's dying to say something
Right.
there.
I have almost 900 contacts to THHR, our Texas Homeowners. They came through like Google, like Abusive Homeowner Association, and that's how they reach us. And an unlimited number are because they try to vote, and their votes are denied because late assessment, we don't have to tell you why it's denied. The votes are just denied.
I'm pretty sure the law has been changed and they can't do that. I think the
that's
law
where I want to
now,
go. Let's talk a little
I think the law
legalities
says
here.
that even if you aren't current on your assessment, you have the right to vote. So I think your problem was a serious problem.
Okay, now, wait, that brings on something else. You are talking about Property Code 209, probably, and 209 said that unless, if for any other reason than an unpaid assessment, you cannot be foreclosed on. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about voting. And again...
Okay, again, then don't let me get off.
I think the voting... I think what you're saying is a serious problem, and I think it's been addressed.
Then it's not, because I'm getting this daily.
Okay, let me take you back for a moment here, and let's talk about, we're getting into the whole thing about foreclosure, and who can foreclose on a home. And as I understand, there's only 4 ways that a home can be foreclosed on in the state of Texas, and one of those 4 is a homeowners association foreclosing on you. What are the rules and regulations that a HOA has to abide by before they can move for foreclosure? In our piece at the beginning, we said that there's no judicial process that they have to go through. I don't know that that is 100% accurate.
That's almost 100% inaccurate.
All right, correct us.
Very few single-family homes have the right to non-judicial foreclosure. Typically, a condominium or a townhome complex may have the right to non-judicially foreclose, but the vast majority of single homes, subdivisions, you have to go through the judiciary to get a foreclosure judgment. So that means notice, a lawsuit filed, an opportunity for the homeowner to be heard.
What are the grounds that an HOA can start that proceeding? Violating any of the guidelines?
No. You cannot foreclose for deed restriction violations. The only thing you can foreclose for is for non-paid assessments. And
so if you don't pay your assessment to the homeowners association,
you could get foreclosed on, conceivably.
that's all they need legally to start the process.
The law is still, I think there are things that can be done to make things better. But the law was changed to prevent some of the most abusive action where somebody was current in their assessment and they were fined. You know, they put their car in the wrong place, their dog pooped on the wrong yard, and they'd be fined. And then there'd be attorney's fees to collect that fine because everybody got in a big argument. You cannot foreclose for those fines and for the attorney's fees arising out of those fines.
If somebody has an HOA that is trying to foreclose about that, they should get legal help then right then and there, the person themselves, because that is illegal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Or they probably ought to just talk to the lawyer that's trying to do it and say,
Well,
wait, is this something you really want to do here?
That's a excellent point. And let me just tell you, we hear of all these egregious situations like the Winona Blevins case. That just doesn't happen.
Which is?
Winona Blevins, well, she was a lady whose house was foreclosed on, and she claimed she didn't receive notice of it.
Okay.
I think there's another side to that argument, but that's probably not for this taping. But what I wanted to tell you is typically in all the associations I represent, the homeowner gets about 6 opportunities to pay his assessment before the homeowners association even thinks about suing them. The management company sends out at least 3 letters saying, you need to pay the assessments, and by the way, if you can't pay them all at once, we'll give you a payment plan. When it's turned over to our office, we send out a minimum of 2, usually 3 letters that say the same thing, that please pay, and if you can't, we'll accept a payment plan. So they have to ignore 6 letters before
that is probably the ideal situation, is what you're talking through.
Well, it's the situation that happens in 99.9% of the situations. It
Back
really
over
is.
to Beanie. Hold on.
And let me, before we get to if I can interrupt one thing, there is a safeguard because nobody's going to stand here and say they all do what's right, which is what you just heard. The law now allows you to redeem the property too, assuming it's done improperly. You get no notice, you don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden your house is sold for the $800 that you owed in back assessments. You have 180 days from that point to redeem the property. And all you have to do if you want to redeem the property is basically pay the person who bought it what they paid and whatever other costs, had they filed a deed or something. So we are trying to put in safeguards. It's hard to stop somebody that just doesn't follow the law.
But that's an absolute safeguard. They have the absolute right for up to half a year
Okay.
afterwards
And now
to redeem.
we're going to let you guys rest for a moment.
And let me
Beanie,
talk
you work with these things all the time.
daily,
This is your organization.
24/7.
So
Okay.
bring me your expertise.
First, you say you can't file for that. I have just the most recent filings. These were downloaded. These are from January 1 through March 15, Harris County. There were about 380 foreclosure filings. And let me tell you what you said for minor things. 2 of them were for tape residue on window. These are, I have the foreclosure filings. And so the other foolishness that they do it for is sunflowers, unaccepted HOAs, a new roof that we don't approve of, and as far as this
I do want to say, in support, before either of you guys say anything, hold on 1 second, is that we hear these stories all the time. Beanie is not the first person to make these accusations. We put this up on our, as I said, on our Facebook, and we had a lot of people talking about things like that.
But
so
the issue
perception is out there.
The issue is not whether, I'm not even saying it's perception. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. The question is, what do you do about it? For example, I saw somebody come down the road right there going 40 miles an hour. That was illegal. The speed limit was 25. What else can we do? Here's the law. It says a property association may not foreclose for fines, attorney's fees for fines. It's illegal to do that. Is it happening?
Well, wait,
are they threatening?
Wait, you're saying for attorney fees?
For fines.
But they
in other words, assessments.
Okay, that's...
The monthly assessment.
They absolutely cannot foreclose for deed restriction violations either. They simply cannot do it. The law is crystal clear.
This is the note all of our audience has to hear, is that if you're in a homeowners association, you're being threatened with foreclosure for deed restriction violations, they do not have the legal right to do that.
Or for a fine.
Or for a fine.
And
Absolutely.
Get a lawyer.
Now, we talked about assessments, and I had somebody write...
Those are the biggies.
We had somebody write and say they bought a home for their mother, $125,000 they paid for the home, and the assessment fee when they bought the home was $125 a month. Flash forward to now, the assessment fee is now $375 a month. They do not have it budgeted to be able to pay that. They're falling behind on their assessment fee. If it were still $125, they could pay it. What happens in a situation like that? What rights do people have when you have purchased a property and agreed upon an assessment at the point of purchase?
The law only allows the homeowners association to raise the dues incrementally each year. In other words, if they bought a house at $100 a year, the homeowners association cannot raise it to $500 the next year. They can only incrementally go up. So I'm not saying that didn't happen, but if that happened, it happened over a large number of years.
Okay.
But again, what
they were citing in their email to us was that Hurricane Ike, with the damage then to repair the damage of the properties, they raised the assessment.
It's a special assessment.
So it did go up, and now they can't afford that. So they can lose their home?
Theoretically, they can. The practical aspect of it, though, is the homeowners association, everyone I know will offer them a payment plan to allow them to pay that over a series of months.
But I'll bet there are ones out there that won't. So I'm curious, legally, do you have any recourse in a situation like this?
Not any more than when your taxes go up. And I think, and I hope you don't think I'm disagreeing with you that there are not abuses. There are, and I get the same things you get. I get horrendous emails from people having problems with homeowners associations that are acting like idiots, that are doing things that are illegal, that are threatening and actually trying to foreclose when they shouldn't. But the big picture, this is pretty much a substitute for your property taxes. This is the way that certain things will be handled. Instead of through the city, the state, the county, some other entity does it. And if your property taxes go up, which they've been doing until about this year, a lot, and people have problems. And I think that's a real problem. If your homeowners association won't work with you, I don't know if legally there's anything you can do because you owe that money. Now, are they going to foreclose? There's probably not a lot of economic benefit to them to foreclose when you're going to pay it off on some payment plan. But if your house is worth anything, you can borrow the money. We have home equity loans now. You can borrow the money to pay it or to get current. And my opinion, the way to deal with a lot of these problems, and it's what I tell anybody that emails me, when I have a homeowners association or I get a letter from somebody, they're threatening the $25 fine for my dog doing something the dog shouldn't do. and they're threatening that they're going to put a lien on my house, they're going to foreclose, they're going to get a lawyer. Be smart here. Pay the $25. Pay them with a check right under protest. Now you can go to small claims court. You're the one controlling everything. You're not incurring additional attorney's fees. You're not footing their bill. You can go to small claims court. You can say there, this was unlawful, this was illegal, you couldn't do it. The justice of the peace will hear the case and decide. But if you fight it and you want to make your point for 3 or 4 years, he's going to like it because he's going to be billing for all of that time.
I cut you off earlier when I told them not to cut you off, and then I did it. So
Yes,
I give it back over to you.
Okay, first, back to payment plans. Again, at the Senate hearing, one man owed $5,000, and the marvelous payment plan they had only cost him $15,000. These are the type of payment plans that are not exactly enable a homeowner to pay.
So what are you asking for? What would your organization like to see happen?
You mean, what are we looking for at the legislature?
Across the board.
Across the board?
If you're having problems with the homeowners associations, yet it seems to be, in a lot of people's minds, a necessary evil. It's something they have to maintain their property values and their community.
I have to disagree with you on that. We fought the takeover by an HOA. We don't have any. We have a civic club. And everybody said, oh, your property values are going to go down. Ours went up. The neighboring HOAs went down. People, they have their investment in their property. Is everybody's grass always manicured? No. That's life. It doesn't have to be manicured. Do we have cars up on cinder blocks? No, and we don't have any polka dot homes and purple ones either.
They're out there.
Yes, they are. But what is it worth sacrificing your freedom and being under police control because you don't want your neighbor doing something? Shut your eyes and go past.
Let me go back to a question we posed at the very top of the show, and it was in the open read that I had for you. When you are buying a piece of property, what are you truly buying?
It's when you buy anything with rights and liabilities attached to it, you're buying everything that's in the documents. That's the one thing that people do that I think a lot of people do, and I wish they didn't, is they go to the closing and they're given a pile this big, which you get 48 hours in advance, and they put it aside and they come in and they sign their name 42 times. Think about it. That's what you bought. You bought a piece of land and a house subject to every word that's in there. Some of them are just your financial obligations, when you have to pay, what happens if you don't pay, and a lot of them are your rights with respect to that property. Easements, another, to me it's sort of related. I get questions all the time about somebody just came through and tore down my fence. I just put that fence. It's because your property has an easement. You don't really own that back 20 feet. Someone has an easement on it. They can tear down the fence. They can put up the tree. They can pull down the tree. You want to know what are the easements on the property, what are the restrictions on use on the property, and what does the Homeowners Association do? What does it say? Is there one? Isn't there one? A civic association, whatever it is, that's what you're buying into, and it's contractual. And that's why all of that has to be on file. It's got to be filed with the deed, so when you go look at the deed, the declarations are there. And I sympathize with the people that have crazy boards, and there are enough of them out there to keep all of us busy with complaints. But generally, they work fine for just your reason. They work fine because whether it was a board, a civic association, or just a bunch of people getting together, they're going to usually do what's right. But if they don't, that's why we have the new law. That's why I think there are still some things that should be changed. For example, I think requiring that a copy of the declaration be provided at the closing or prior to the closing, instead of telling the person you've got to go find it. That costs no one any money, and it's right there and you can look at it. That's a simple fix.
Okay, Charles, let me ask you real quick before we run out of time. As these organizations are built, these homeowners associations, are there specific guidelines that all homeowners associations must abide by outside of just the foreclosure stuff we just spoke about? Or is it whatever the group of people want to make it?
Not at all. First of all, they all have articles of incorporation and bylaws that dictate how the board has to act. Those are all similar.
But those are made by the homeowners association.
They're made by the developer who first institutes the deed restrictions. But the property code has specific requirements that have to be met by homeowners associations. And they're pretty specific, aren't they, Richard? So, yes, they absolutely are governed by a set of pretty specific things that they can and cannot do.
Beanie? I just am guessing you have a response to that.
Yes, he alluded to the property code. Property code 204 gave all powers to boards, legislative, executive, and judicial, and if a homeowner disagrees, his only recourse is a lawsuit.
We have 15 seconds. Would one of you gentlemen like to respond to that?
It just simply isn't true. I mean, there's all kinds of safeguards for homeowners in the property code. I mean, the property code requires homeowners associations, if we write to a homeowner and say you're violating the deed restrictions, the law requires that we give them a hearing before the board, before any fines or anything else can be.
I'm going to wrap all this up because we're out of town and simply say what I'm taking from this is get the information and learn for yourself. Know what you're getting yourself into, know what you're signing, know what the background is behind the board. You guys can continue talking among yourselves, but I'm going to say now each week we invite you to visit our home online at HoustonPBS. Simply click on the local programs bar, pick Houston 8, and you can join our online community. You can read more about the guests, learn more about the topic, share your thoughts and ideas, and even suggest questions we might ask during upcoming episodes. Remember, information posted on our website may be used on air, so keep that in mind when submitting. That does it for us tonight. Till next time, I'm Ernie Manous. Good night.